And that's what it looks like when you go live. Welcome back, Scott Jernigan.
Hey, thank you. Good to be back, Dave Rush. Good to
I
see
know that
you.
you've been working in the background, but I got to tell you, the way I see it online, your presence has been sorely missed. And we are very pleased to have you home.
Good to be back. Good to be back.
So I take your presence here to mean that you've been able to shuffle a couple things off your plate, get a couple hours on a Friday, and
I am down to one project,
huzzah.
right?
I know what
Yeah.
that project is. It will never end.
Well, yeah, that would be the revision of the Network Plus book. I guess I also have the Security Plus simulations. I hear you, Andre, but I'm getting there.
That reminds me, when we get done today, before you go to your meeting, do you have a meeting after the drama today?
I do. I do.
Give me 30 seconds of your time. I want to talk about Sec Plus Sims offline with you before you go away. Something significant and important that will
Okay.
impact my workload.
All right. All right.
And that's
I
what it's
can
all
deal
about.
with that.
Yeah. Well, hey, listen, everybody, welcome to Pi Day Friday. It is Friday afternoon, 2 o'clock Central Time. I am Dave Rush.
And I am Scott
And with
Jernigan.
me, my partner in Pi is
Scott Jernigan.
And Scott, what do you do?
So I am editor-in-chief for Total Seminars and a frequent co-author and writer with Mike Meyers, the president of Total Seminars, and an instructor and all-around nice guy.
And rumor has it you've got a golden pipe, by which I mean to say your voice.
Yes, and I'm working on it. Oh, and of course, the exciting thing for next summer is I'm auditioning for the Houston Archdiocese Choir.
Wow.
Who are going to go to Rome and sing for the Pope.
Oh, good luck. Congratulations. Right? Just on the audition alone, that's fantastic.
Yeah, it should be fun.
Well, that will put, I would imagine that by then we're into writing the next generation A+, so that will, put that 3 months behind schedule. Sorry, Scott can't write. He's rehearsing.
Yeah, right. I can't write anymore. I need to sing. I need to sing.
My fingers hurt.
Wait. What? Oh, Monty Python sketch?
Exactly.
John, stop it. No. There will be no singing.
That's right. Oh, man. I love that one. That's a great line in a cartoon on Fox or something like that a while back where somebody was doing Monty Python and a female character said, "No, not Monty Python. I'm a girl. I don't even like the good episodes."
Wow. How could anybody not love Monty Python?
Exactly. Hey, well, this is Drama. Dave Rush Ask Me Anything and Scott, Dramas. I am Dave Rush. I am the senior instructor at Total Seminars. I do all kinds of things and wear all kinds of hats. And on rare occasion, I even get to instruct these days. But mostly my instructional world happens right here with you. We're here to talk about using Raspberry Pis as a learning tool and sometimes as a fun tool. They are great little devices that can be used in labs and home networks and home computer systems to try out all kinds of things related to CompTIA certifications. We make servers out of them. We make protocol grabbers and analyzers, things like Wireshark and TCP captures and TCP dump. That's the right word for that. And all kinds of other goodies. And sometimes we just do things for the heck of it because Pis are fun. Today, a little crossover of both. We're going to do a really fun beginning of a 2, possibly 3-part series. We'll see how that goes. Okay. You can tell them all about that when it happens. I've lost my train of thought. Never mind. So we're going to do some cool stuff with Pi stuff today, and it's going to be general fun, and we'll find some ways to apply it to a number of CompTIA learning objectives. Let me do a quick here, and then we'll go check out the chat feed. Hey, if you're tracking, this is the 35th in a series of dramas. I know we're 35, and I only do one a week, so I guess that puts us over the half-year point. Excuse me, lemonade today. It's not real lemonade. You just, powdered lemonade is a flavor. Real lemonade is a curative. So this is a presentation of Total Seminars, and both Scott and I offer our gratitude to the great Mike Meyers, who runs the show here and does a couple of AMAs himself on Mondays and Wednesdays at this same time period at this same channel. And he has very gratefully offered this time slot to Scott and I for us to help your training out and advance all of our studies for those of us who are locked down by COVID, which, if you watch the news daily, the numbers are improving, the vaccinations are going up. So who knows? We may be out of this thing in a year or less. Hoping. Scott, here because of his golden throat, because of his incredible depth and breadth of knowledge, he's become quite the Linux aficionado, especially in certain flavors of Linux, like Kali. Yeah. Are you still muted? I could look.
I am still muted. I don't know if you can actually hear the tree trimmer.
I cannot hear the tree trimmer.
Okay. All right.
I hear the tree falling on your roof.
Kali Linux, Ubuntu. I've got a Pop OS box running as well.
Oh, nice.
Having fun with Linux. Working on the next generation of Linux Plus, which I should be ready for when it pops here in another, I don't know, 6 months.
Yeah, I know. It's almost a waste of time for me to finish what I'm doing right now. The world holds its collective breath. Yep. And of course, we have folks I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
And of course, we got folks paying quasi attention in the background who work with Total Seminars. We've got Michael Smyer back there, not to be confused with Mike Meyers. They are two different people, and they are real names. They are real people. He is a true Linux guru, and our other parts of our brain trust. So we have a lot of expertise in the Linux side of this. I bring my expertise to the electronic side of it, and everybody comes together in a big team effort. And there we go. Let me throw this slide up, and then we'll check the chat feed and see what's going on. Oh, was I foolish there? Sure, I didn't get it all. It's ready. It's just not in the right place to capture.
I have faith in you, Dave. You can do it. You can do it.
I don't have a choice. Click this. There we go. Hey, so this is an Ask Me Anything, and that means ask Scott anything, ask Dave anything. If you want to ask Mike Meyers anything, we'll get it to him. If you're watching this live, use the YouTube chat. Post your messages, post your questions. If you want to talk to somebody else, just precede their screen name with the @sign. If we see @signs, I scroll right on past. That's a conversation that's between two other people and don't got nothing to do with me. If you want to send a message to me, @Dave Rush, or yeah, that's it. I'm not using the other account, @Scott Jernigan. And of course, if you are not watching this live in real time, but you are watching this sometime in my future on the archives, you can contact Scott or I or Mike by email. We love your questions. We love your comments. So catch me at daver@totalsem.com because I'm Dave Rush. Scott Jernigan, amazingly, Scott J @totalsem.com. And I'll bet you can figure out Michael Meyers, okay, just in case, Michael M @totalsem.com. You can also contact my personal email, drushtx. I've been online a lot, gaming on Steam, but only cruddy little games because my gaming rig is still dead and my laptop just can't game anything powerful. But you'll find me as BloodRushTX, and I'm always logged in, so I get to see who else logs in and invite me. Scott's online playing. You got a litany of games going on these days, Scott. What do you got?
I do. I'm playing Civilization 6 because I have to. Crusader Kings 3, Conan Exiles.
Nah.
Still playing Counter-Strike Go.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and Borderlands 3. So, you know.
Excellent. I've got it. It just, man, it's my machine is so slow. It quite literally takes 25 minutes to get it booted up and playing on this computer. So I've got to resurrect my beast. But you can find Scott on Steam at Scarheart. You can find Mike on Steam at Senor Pepe, SENOR space PEPE. Senor Pepe. Okay, that's fixed. That's fixed. Let's go see what's going on the YouTube chat. Okay, 10 minutes past the hour. Oh, goodness gracious.
Yeah, I'm down to one monitor, so I'm just watching the live feed.
Oh, wow. I knew
Yeah,
you were down at one when you were working in the studio this week with Mike.
weird. Yeah, I guess I can. Yeah, no, just down to one monitor. So I'm looking at you on the live stream, and then I'm turning over here to look at the chat. So
Okay, well, that's the way we'll do it then.
Yep.
All right, not too way early, people. I appreciate that. That's a good thing. Tell what pokes in at 1:54. By the way, we got 10 people watching. Ooh, come on, we need a few more. But for the 10 of you, let's like and subscribe, huh? In fact, I'll do it right now. It's not my channel, so I can like it. I wonder if you can like your own channel.
I like your channel, Dave.
Thanks. Yes, dramas. Good. Scott joining in. Andre is here. Yeah, we missed you at Mike's on Wednesday, but I saw your message on Discord later that said classes ran late and long. So good. Welcome back.
Yep, absolutely.
Patricia Grace is here. Hey, nerdette. That's what you're going to do. And greetings, Alan Duggan. Patricia, I threw up a bunch of note stuff the other day, so we're even. Multi-talented bunch of nerds at Total Sim. Yeah, but some of us are ashamed of our talents, and rightly so. Sup, Andrew Hutz? Oh, let's see. They're lucky. Some tree trimmers just started outside my windows. Out on your trees or neighbor, City of Houston trees? What do you got cooking?
I don't know. Just random yard people.
Oh, okay. And you'll go out in the morning and say, "Where's all my trees?"
Right. I don't live in a tree house, but I do have a tree house.
That's true. Well, those who live in tree houses shouldn't throw chainsaws.
There's the tree house I built.
Greetings, mi amigo. I know. I just chose that language today, not because of your name. Sorry, finishing up. A bit of a dry cough. Expected. Andrew Hutz, I just have to say the WD-40 is awesome, and literally one spray of it fixed a desk squeak that was disrupting me all week. I share. I had a gig on Saturday and Sunday this past weekend. 9 stage platforms, all arranged in a big 3x3. And the stages haven't been out. One or two of them go out every now and again, but I haven't sent out this many in a long time. And they sit under a tarp on a trailer in the back lot, and they've accumulated just a little bit of oxidation. And so when I went to pull out one of the first legs and it fought me, I said, well, let's grab a couple of cans of WD-40 and silicone spray and work on them. And it's a miracle juice, if ever there was one.
It is very much so.
Totally unrelated, but it's improved my day significantly.
Right.
I just want to know what happened to WD1 through WD39, and Heinz 1 through Heinz 56.
Well, we know what happened to WD-42.
Nice.
It just never stops being funny, Dave.
That's right. Alex is here. Dave and Scott together. It's true. And Dave and Scott and Alex and Tullowit and Andre. The only one we're missing is from the click cliche is Zach, who's been invisible for the last few days on all the platforms that I see him on. So
work, I think.
I'm sure he's working his head off. Oh, Super Scroll. Oh, goodness. We got lots of stuff going on. That's kind of nice when it's Super Scrolls. It gives me an idea of just how far we've got to catch up already. Buonasera. Right. Grazie. You're see, they do that, Andre. You and a couple of the other guys will throw out text lingo and look at the color of this thing and look at the length of this thing. Do you think I understand what CSGO player is? I barely know what LOL means and ROTFL. Go ahead, tell us, Scott.
Global offensive. Come on, man.
Oh, okay. With my machine down, I'm going to fire up this weekend Canyon Racer, for goodness sake. I know my laptop can handle that. I do it sometimes when I'm on the road teaching, and I'll play that at lunch if I'm not prepping.
I'm just going to bring you a machine. I have spare parts to
Yeah,
make
thank
a
you.
gaming
I don't know
machine.
how to build one.
Come on. I think I have like a 1060, just like that's collecting
That's not
dust.
I got a good video card. Yeah, I don't want to get into the details of what's wrong with my computer. It's just the bottom line is I got to send a hard drive to Mexico. And if you think I'm kidding, think again. I have to send a hard drive to Mexico. I was nearly pro at 1.6 back in the day. That's a concept for the wizened bearded one that is very hard for me to grasp. Professional gaming. I understand that it happens, and more power to those people who can participate. But man,
One of my nephews is at that level right now,
really?
like crazy. And the amount of time that he spends gaming and winning and making money. I mean,
Well,
it's
yeah,
like, okay, go for
yeah, you
it.
can't go. Who'd have thought when we were kids that there would be professional bicyclists and skateboarders, trick
Right.
bikers?
Yeah. Where, we just did it because it was fun.
Yeah, transportation.
And I have the scars to prove it. We didn't have helmets back then at all.
Hell, what?
Yeah, I know, right?
Andrew Hutz, my team got invited to the Cal Invitational, but one of our guys popped for weed. That's what, isn't it mandatory if you're gaming to pop for weed? Sorry, I'm totally amusing myself.
Nice.
Alex, no pun, but a Star Wars quote in the back. I missed it. Yeah, so that was the last of the big Star Wars props that I have been waiting to get up. I was terrified last night because I had to hang it, and that thing weighs more than anything that I've ever put up as a prop before. I've been looking for a full-size Millennium Falcon for a long time for a studio that I have upstairs for a different project, and the whole goal on that one is to rotate Star Wars props instead of concert tees. And this thing, if you get it intact, this is missing so much stuff. They're thousands of bucks. And I ran into this thing that was quite literally covered with about 2 millimeters of dust and mud and dirt on some guy's flea market table. And I said, "What do you want?" And he said $6. And I couldn't get the money out fast enough.
Nice.
And came home and cleaned it for days. And so
now it is the prop.
Right. So Alex, your panettone and your candy from Italy were wonderful. Thank you. And unsolicited. I don't want you to send me any more because it added 9 pounds to me. However, if anybody has a 1979 set of Kenner parts lying around and you want to send that, and I'll put this thing intact, that would just be so cool. Or other way around. If somebody's got $6 plus shipping, you can have it because I am now done with Star Wars props. Back to shirts. Oh, it's Scott Jernigan. Nice to know where I can live if I come to Texas. Yeah, I'll tell you what, I'm very excited that your family is coming and that you will at least come for a visit and hopefully even longer. You would be a good addition to Texas.
I flashed the treehouse in the background, which is what he was responding to.
Okay. Yeah, you got arrested for flashing before, didn't you? Flashing.
Say.
Let's see. Alex is okay. So Alex is making another run at Sec Plus. Sorry about that one. So I'm feeling fed up spending my evenings with Mike. Hey, Alex, I'm sure you're contacting Scott for help, and by all means, if there's anything that I can do, if there's anything that Mike can do, we want to hear from you. We want to help. We'll work with you on Discord. We'll work with you on email. And same goes for anybody else here. You got questions, absolutely. We got answers. They may not be related.
Since you brought up Discord, we do not have, but there is a unofficial Total Seminars channel Discord set up by our friend Jose Braden, and Dave will flash up the invitation.
I will
momentarily, one assumes. We're there often right after the AMAs. So about 4 o'clock Central Time for a while, but then it's a 24/7 kind of thing. So we're ask questions. It's a good way to interact with other techs. There's the link today. So join us. I will be a little late today. I have a meeting with our publisher, but we are often on right after our AMAs. So join us on Discord.
I'm posting it on the chat feed right now. I will be on. As usual, it takes me about 15 minutes or so to clean up my life here after the show. But as soon as the show is done and I'm cleaned up, I shall be on there. Also along those lines, things that are up and available in the world's a happy place. We set up a web server some weeks ago.
Right.
That has archives of all of the resources that I use to do these shows, my scripts and my outlines and my graphics and. And if you would like to have those resources, use them as you follow along in the archives, or even, do it live. I try and post them now. I'm caught up. So I post them before the show starts. And I posted the link in, let me get this thing shared and then I can do this. I posted the link in Discord today.
Okay.
I'll stick it up here right now. Sorry, got an alert. There we go.
Again, I have faith in you, Dave.
And I am also posting this in the feed.
Excellent. Pi Square.
Right. So it's the Pi Square site. I'm using a third-party DDNS server. So I'm using one of their domains, zapto.org. But hit that if you want to get any or all of the resources that I use to prep these shows. It's a lot of fun. And you can find my typos. And I imagine it's like when somebody finds an original manuscript unedited from Da Vinci or something like that. Oh, that's the way Dave thinks. God, what an idiot.
Wait, okay, hold on. You just compared yourself to Da Vinci.
I did not. I compared somebody else's experience with Da Vinci.
I mean, like,
I don't compare myself with Da Vinci.
Mike and I are pretty arrogant, but that just goes.
I am an instructor. Arrogance goes with that territory.
There is that.
All right. Let's see. Ooh, people. What is this? Okay. Oh, look, your worshipfulness. Let's get one thing straight. I take orders from just one person, me. I love that. Way to go. My team got it. Okay, I did that. I skipped that one earlier. Here we go. As long as I'm not allergic to oak trees. I presume you mean oak tree pollen. That would be horrible to be allergic to oak. In this world, you would die. Everything is made of oak and pine.
I am off the charts on oak tree pollen.
Okay, that makes sense.
Especially the live oak that I built the tree house in.
Well, thank goodness for COVID then, since you always have to wear a mask.
That's right. Yeah, so I'm just hanging out inside.
Yeah. You should see Scott's treehouse, guys, and the things that he does with it every year, especially at Halloween and on occasion at Christmas. It becomes part of one of the best scenes in his very large neighborhood. So he's had pictures up before. He'll do it again.
I literally showed it live about 10 minutes ago.
I understand. I was looking at something else at the time, but yeah, put the link up sometime to your smug mug or whatever you're keeping over there and let them peruse. You have so much good stuff there.
Lights in the Heights, my Christmas stuff.
Yeah.
It's truly insane. Okay.
You can run CS on a potato. Okay. I'll try it on the laptop. You don't like the streams with Mike anyway? I know, I read that way. I didn't put any emphasis on that, Andre, at 2:15. I was going to follow that up on Discord. Yeah, so I've been blowing off Discords for the last couple of sessions. I will definitely be there today, and I apologize for some of it was necessary and some of it was useful.
Wait,
Friday.
Some of it was necessary and some of it was useful?
Well, yeah, like when Mike finished up a show because of the technical problems that we had a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, right.
That freed up 2 hours of my life that I got some work done that I wasn't planning on doing. So really useful for me. Hey, we had a real question at 2:18. You can tell Scott's putting glasses on.
Right. No, I can actually see the chat now.
And then there's that. So 2:18, Andrew Hutz, what's the best way to control all my various Pis from my desktop or my central Pi? I use TeamViewer for Pi 4s. You use TeamViewer, huh? for desktop GUI usage, but that won't work for the zeros. I have in the house running way more Pis than I have here on the desk. So I got 12, I think, on the desk today that are running, and there's Pi holes and there's servers and there's other goodies. And I've got every one of them using a version of Raspberry Pi OS or Ubuntu or Kali, or every one of those has a server on it that works with VNC, with real VNC rather specifically. So I control, for lack of a better term, all of those with that. Some of them that are managed sort of collectively, like my Pi cluster up here. I've got a 5 Pi cluster in front of me. I'm going to talk a little bit about him today. I've got that one set up with a parallel SSH program. So I log into one of them and I use this parallel SSH program, and that establishes a simultaneous SSH session with all 5 of them. And so I can run the same commands and same sessions simultaneously. So if you're into command line, you could do that. You could do all your Pis if you have. So especially, I wouldn't run updates and upgrades with a cron job, because I want to be aware of anything that might potentially cause a problem. But for programs like that, those ones I'm willing to upgrade and update all the time. So that's a great way to log into one, and with one command, I've got half a dozen Pis getting all updated and upgraded in the background and go off and do something else. There's other multi-management platforms out there, but you know, we're not running rack systems here. We're not running, hosted platforms.
Right.
So I wouldn't go anything that much more sophisticated. What do you run your 30 Pis with, Scott?
I only have one. Actually, I only have one, but I'm about to. I think after today's gaming session, I'm going to upgrade to a Pi 4B, at least an 8 gig. So.
Well, 8's the top, so at least a 4. I'm doing on 4. But yeah, after this, I too will finally purchase. I'm 2 months away from purchasing an 8. I could buy it right now and order it, no big deal. And but as many of you know, I use the Brave browser, and the Brave browser, if you allow it, throws ads at you. And every time you click on their ad, I'm set for the maximum 5 per hour. All you have to do is wait for the web page to load. I don't look at it. I just click on it. It loads in the background, and then I close the window. And for that, I receive a derivative of Ethereum. And I have almost enough of this derivative to purchase my Raspberry Pi B with 8 gigs, my 4B.
Wow. Okay, that's cool.
Cash comes out of my pocket.
Nice.
So that's what I'm waiting for. I screwed up. I blew it about 6 months ago and accidentally erased all of my money. I would have had enough to buy 2 by now.
Wow.
Okay, moving on here. 221. Andre, I took the exam on the first module of my degree on Wednesday morning. Passed, got an 8 out of 10. Congratulations, awesome. Man. I love that your advanced education is proceeding apace. That's wonderful news. My mother-in-law is getting vaccinated tonight. Okay.
No, that's exciting.
It is exciting. I was looking for something snarky, and I had a whole bunch, but it was way over the edge on snarky.
Yeah, no, getting
it involves, this is a good one. I'll live with this. So you're having your mother-in-law shot, huh? It's something many sons-in-law would like to.
Or your mother-in-law is doing shots.
Or,
so.
Yeah. Reading, no clue. Awesome, Andrew. Dang it, says Andre. It must be tired. I must be a bit tired. I'm making silly typos. It's okay. We don't judge. I am good.
I do. I have
to. The difference is you fix. Yeah, you fix and you correct nicely. My keyboard, I love my keyboard, but it's really getting old. And it's got heavy press keys, and some of them have become so dirty and heavy press that they don't happen. So after I'm done touch typing, I go back and read and said, man, how did I possibly misspell that?
That's your story? Story,
And
Dave.
I'm sticking with it. It's a true story. It's not the only reason for my poor writing, but it's one of the elements. Yes, Lil, it is legit. There you go. It's BAT. Basic Attention Token. Says yep. Andrew Hutz at 228 in my crypto wallet for years. Nice. Yeah, we'll get into complaining about the crypto wallets that are available in another life. Hey, we're almost at the end here. 229. Josh, welcome. Josh, good to see you, amigo. And last one on my feed right now, and then we'll do some other stuff in the notes. Mivin Feliciano at 229. I was doing the same thing with the ads on Brave, but then it disappeared on me and it stopped. And I think I was supposed to register. No, you probably still have it. It's probably, unless you've done a clean install or something like that. Talk to us about it on Discord, and I'll tell you what little I know about it and why I think it's probably still there, and how it may still be there, and how you can get it or use it. Buy an IBM Model M. All right, I'm going to take that as a pause point at 2:30, and let me go see what's in Uncle Notes to talk about today. Hey, Scott, I want to talk to you about this offline. I didn't.
Wait.
Again?
The Model M keyboard.
Yes.
I seriously had that.
Is that right?
It was like the big, giant, clackety, built like a tank. Keyboard. It came with my 8088. I loved that keyboard.
What is not to love? I'm with you on that. And the case was metal.
Yeah, and it sounded, when I would write using that keyboard, it was like writing on a manual typewriter. It was like so loud and just like, oh, I'm right there. Completely visceral feeling.
Yep. Hey, yeah, I didn't get a chance to talk to you about this offline, and we did two different things on Monday and Wednesday. You and Mike did. So, question is whether or not I should do it. On Monday, Mike had a special. On Wednesday, he said no special this week. So I have the Monday special documented here.
Go ahead and put it up.
Okay.
Go ahead and put it up. Yeah, absolutely. The special
will operate on the principle that this does exist and does work.
Absolutely.
Okay. So as you know, we've got weekly specials. We make them available only to the viewers of our AMAs and dramas. So the special this week is 50% off CompTIA Total Tester bundles. So the practice test, the sims, and the videos. The code this week, good through Sunday, Island 21. And they sent it to me in lowercase. I'm told that mixed case works, but the code system in our system, you have to manually put in every possible combination of upper and lower case. So use Island, all lowercase 21. I know that code works. I don't know if they did the other 5 to the 26th iterations of mixed case and all upper and whatever. So good through this Sunday. Anything else going on here? We did the Discord channel, and we did this. By the way, I had this up, and I was yammering while I was putting up. So the PyR Square server is up at pyrsquare.zapto.org. You don't have to do the HTTPS. It'll automatically redirect you there. And also, if we suggest to you that you might want to go see one of our episodes back in the archives, this is where the archives are. I never bothered to put that up in the past. Thought it might be useful. YouTube.com, whack user, whack Total Seminars channel. And you'll see all of Mike's AMAs and all of our dramas and a number of other stuff we've got there. I can't wait to catch up on what you're goggling at.
Keyboard jokes.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'll look at them in a minute. I'm going to do this.
Okay.
I can just get wrapped up in that stuff. All right, so that's Q&A specials. I always do a little shindig at this point that says, remember, you don't need a Pi to do what we're doing for many of the labs today. Today's an exception. We are doing something very specific to make it possible to run programs that were designed to run on non-Pi, non-ARM based Linux. And so you got to have a Pi or at least some other popular ARM-based Linux to do what we're going to do today. And there's my notes. I did that. I did that. I did that. Last week, we did two things. It was a largely open question session. And we also brought out my 5 Pi cluster to fix or improve at least on the testing software that we used last time when we first set the cluster up. When we first set that cluster up, the testing software that we used was simply duplicated on all of the Pis. So there really was no improvement in performance over doing it with just a single Pi. And that happened because that was the test that the tutorial writer used, and I just accepted it on faith. But when I realized what was going on, I finally found one that was truly cooperative, and we did that. So we did an exercise where we had one computer calculate all the values of Pi up to 100, and it took 1.7 seconds or something like that. And then we did it with 5 Pis, and it did it in 0.3 seconds. Then we did that up to 1,000 and got commensurate values. And then I did 1 Pi and ran it up to 1,000,000. And then we got all 5 going, and it didn't finish in the same amount of time. I chewed on that all week, and I worked on it all week, and I figured out what was going on. Overheating. Long and short of it, asking all those Pis to do all that work for so long caused some of the CPUs to overheat, so they throttled, and then they would throttle up and throttle down and throttle up and throttle down.
All right, so
I want the answer to this. I have got to know how long it takes 5 Pis to check the primality, that's a word, of all the numbers from 1 through 1,000,000. So I went to China yesterday, and I ordered a new cluster stack case that's got fans on all the levels.
Wow.
So
Okay.
as that comes in, I'll rebuild my cluster stack. I'll rerun one of them because I suspect there was some throttling, and now it took 14 hours for 1 Pi to check the primality from 1 to 1,000,000. So I'll rerun that and see if it runs in less than 14 hours, and then do the same thing with the 5 Pis. I'll fill you in.
Yeah, let us know.
Yeah, and it's exciting. Okay, what are we doing today?
What are we
doing? We are going to do a multi-part series of a project. I don't know if it's going to be 2 parts or 3 parts. We'll figure that out today when I know what we can accomplish today. I don't want to dump too much on you in a day, and I don't want to do too little and keep you bored. And the way the topics work out, it's a we'll see. But the point of our exercise today is to run an emulator on a Raspberry Pi. An emulator is, everybody would kind of compare it to a virtual machine. It's not. It's a program that says, I run on a computer that runs this kind of operating system and this kind of processor. Somebody has a program that's designed to run on a different kind of proper operating system, and perhaps even a different operating system. So this emulator is a translator, really. It says you can run this program, for instance, one that's designed to run on an Intel machine or an AMD machine, running Debian Linux, running Red Hat Linux, running whatever, and it will talk to the emulator software, thinking that that emulator software is an AMD Debian box. And what the emulator does then is translates all of the calls and codes and processing instructions and so forth into the native code for the type of computer and processor that we're running on. So we're going to use an emulator called box86. It allows us to run exactly what I described, Linux programs that were designed to run on x86 boxes, but on a Raspberry Pi.
And the reason, so the emulation then is going from the x86 software to be able to run on the ARM processor that's native for the Pi, right?
Exactly correct.
Okay.
And it's a 2-part thing. It also translates from generic Linux commands to Raspberry Pi OS Linux commands and similar Debian distros.
Right. So just for the record, like all of the games and stuff that we're gonna show.
Yeah.
If you're running a Linux box on an x86 processor, these will all run on there, and they're great. So
Absolutely. Yep, they're
Linux.
good. We're going to use Steam games.
Yeah.
There's a Steam client that's available for Linux, and we're going to have to install that. It's designed to run on an x86, so that's one of the programs and processes that we have to use the emulator for. And
Cool.
then once we've got the Steam client going, now we're going to download and install and run x86 Linux games. So it's very, very cool.
Great.
The installation of the emulator program is so simple. It's basically 4 commands. One of them, however, takes 28 minutes on my machine using a Pi 4 4B with 4 gigs of RAM. So we're not going to be able to do this in real time. I've already got it done in advance.
Okay.
But that's done. You know, I could just walk you through the 4 steps right now and say, okay, we're done. Now let's take questions. But again, I want to stretch this out. We got a 2-hour show and I got stuff to do. So there are actually 2 more things that you need to make the experience usable. One of them is faster processor you have, the better the experience will be. And so we're going to talk about how to overclock the ARM CPU on the Raspberry Pi. Now, when you overclock anything, and if you just overwork something that's even not overclocked, it gets hot. And when Raspberry Pi and every other processor in the world gets too hot, it slows itself down. They call that throttling, and that'll give it a chance to cool off. Your program runs slower while that's happening. When it gets to an acceptable temperature, then it speeds back up. And then what happens is you wind up in this vicious cycle. He processes real fast for a couple seconds, gets overheated, throttles back, cools down, runs slow. Okay, cool enough. Now let's do it again. So the other piece to this game then is not only do we have to overclock basically to make this work, but we got to come up with an effective cooling solution.
Okay.
So I'm doing that as either episode 2, or I'm going to at least lay down the overclocking foundations today.
Okay.
And then part 3, which we'll either do in the second half of next week or devote the entire 3rd week of the series, if we go that far, we'll be installing and running programs like Steam, like Zoom, and like other things.
Cool.
Yep, you can run Zoom on a Linux box.
Sounds awesome.
It's going to be fun.
So active cooling, passive cooling, water cooling, you going to give us some hints or?
Exactly. We're going to talk about all those things.
Okay. All right.
And of course, Pis come naturally passive cooled. And there are lots of people who argue that the Pi 4 isn't functional enough with the native passive cooling that it comes with, and you've got to. Well, I have never used active cooling as a necessity on any of the Pis that I've run on any of our labs or before, or things that I don't do with you.
Right.
So I'm going to argue with that and say, by and large, most things do not require a more active cooling solution for a Pi. However, our project today is going to be an exception. So we'll break out the coolers. I'll talk about some today here. I got it in hand right now. This is my ice tower. I have it mounted on a little fake platform right now that's just using the same layout as a Raspberry Pi. So there's a nice big surface on the bottom of this thing. It contacts directly with the CPU lid, and you can use thermal transfer tape or paste or whatever makes you happy and bolt it down and run this thing. This is the singular only cooling device that I have ever seen reviewed for Raspberry Pis that allows it to run full throttle, full power, full speed in overclock mode 100% of the time and never overheat or throttle. There's a lot of things that are pretty good. There are a lot of things that are okay, and there are a lot of things that are just abysmal. But this is the guy. He costs as much as a Pi. He's $29, I think I paid for that new. But I'm getting ahead of myself.
Okay.
Do this another thing, and then I'll get back to questions.
Okay.
News, tricks, and techniques of the week. There's not much. I only have 2 today. Already did one. The Pi-Square server is up and running. So pirsquare.zapto.org. Go and get your resources. And I already kind of covered most of the other ones, and that was talking about what was wrong with the the Pi cluster. So that's
Right.
all my news and tricks of the week. Yeah, ordered the case from China. I just ordered it yesterday, so it's probably going to be 3 weeks or so before that comes in, and that'll
Okay.
work out just about perfect. Then we'll finish this uh, emulator series and move on from there. So let's do questions, and then we'll get started on the project.
All right. Sounds great.
I finished off at 2:30. It looks like there's been about 10 minutes worth of questions since then.
At least 10 minutes worth of comments.
That's okay. We as long as we get done in about 15 minutes, plenty of time to do the lab.
All right. Sounds good.
Keyboard. Cryptocurrency is not as cool as cryptozoology. And if I have my pronunciation right, it's zoology. So fine. Yeah, those original IBM Model M's. Those were the original mechanical keyboards. And then, of course, you got the PC Junior with the chiclet keyboard. And then everybody's gone to the plastic that we've all been using, button computers and membrane systems that we've been using for decades, except for gamers and people like yourself who say, oh, I just love my mechanical gaming keyboard. So you write with that thing?
Me?
Yeah.
I actually have.
I know Mike did.
I have switched to a completely different keyboard because I'm getting up so early in the morning, and I have a house full of people.
Yeah, clicky noise, huh?
And so I'm more conscious now of the sound of the keyboard, and so I've gone to a ultra silent keyboard.
Oh wow!
So it's a very different experience. It feels almost exactly like a Mac keyboard.
Okay.
Super thin, very quiet, very little tactile thing, and it's a different writing experience. For sure. But yeah, I miss my loud keyboards.
Yeah. Well, we'll send them all away on vacation.
That's right. Or send me on vacation.
Done deal.
I'll sit in my hotel room and go clackety, 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 clackety.
Take one to Rome if you ever go to Rome. They like it there. Hey, if you ever do go to Rome, that sounds like a phone call to Alice.
Already in the works.
Excellent.
Absolutely. And
234, Andrew bot and totally forgot the Brave browser when it launched. So, hey, there you go. Yeah, so it's not bot. It's a derivative of, oh, no, you bought bot. Okay, you bought bat. Never mind. It's not a derivative. I was thinking you were bought Bitcoin because we all wish we did, right?
Right.
Past their prime. Sorry, you should be arrested for that one. Can it run Crisis? It's the one question we ask of every gaming computer, right?
Right.
1 frame per second. And good response, Tellowit. Well, cool, Andrew. Looks like we're going to be right up your alley.
Yep.
Combo breaker. Darn right, liquid nitrogen cooling. If I knew that it was pure enough, I would just slowly drip it on instead of pump it through a radiator system. They ask questions when you buy too much liquid nitrogen. Just saying. Water cooled Pi, 120 millimeter fans. It's all good. I run it in an ice block, what they used to call igloo houses.
There you go.
Let's see. Custom loop for Raspis, LMFAO. It's a Hyper 212. Yeah, look at there are RGB cases exist for Raspberry and Raspberry stacks and clusters. It's kind of cool. I was looking at them when I was looking at China sites yesterday. This Pi shall make 0.5 past light.
Like I said, 10 minutes worth of great comments.
Yeah, I can see that. It's good stuff. Good merging Star Wars and overclocking. Don't you super scroll on me. Passing 246. Mr. S is here. Greetings, Mr. S. Good to see you back. Why would you want a silent keyboard, Scott? Make some noise. Because he has sleeping family. He's a nice guy. At least
so they tell me. Never. I don't know.
I've worked with him for 10 years. I know when he's acting nice and when he is nice. I want to stream with the two of you. Thank you, Stripes reference. And if you don't, and Alice, if you didn't know that was a Stripes reference, it's a beautiful Stripes reference, and Tullowit can explain it to you. I never realized how loud my keyboard was until I got on Zoom. Oh, wow. Why are you typing while you're on Zoom? The whole point of Zoom is this. We do
Because
very little.
he's goofing off.
Well,
That's what.
okay, okay.
Right? He's supposed to just be typing or not typing.
Man, I shouldn't drink all that, but I'm really parched.
No worries.
I never. So I'm trying to do an Excalibur joke on that, Tullowit. I never knew how quiet was my keyboard until it was loud.
I totally don't get it.
Did you see Excalibur?
Many, many times.
We have King Arthur who's wasting away, and they bring him the chalice, and he drinks from it and kind of comes to and says, I never knew how empty was my soul until it was filled again.
Okay. I can literally quote.
Haven't seen it enough.
I can quote the Merlin doing the dragon straight up word for word. I've seen the movie so many times.
What, the Anal Nathrak?
Yes.
Yeah.
I could do the whole thing.
Yeah, that's one of the first quotes I learned. All together now. Anal Nathrak.
Geek.
Geek. Okay, I'm done with that. Hey, let's do a project. It's cool. It's
project.
We will get this project done. Okay. It's such a good movie. It's such a bad movie. It's just got everything good and bad in it. Hey, so we're going to talk about emulators. And specifically, we're going to talk about the box86 emulator program available for Raspberry Pi, and it runs on some other ARM-based system on a chip computers. Our motivation, a couple of things. First of all, just from a learning perspective, there are objectives in the big three, the trifecta of courses that deal with containerization, they deal with virtualization, they deal with emulation. So that's some of the things that we've sort of accomplished along the way here. We've done virtual machines. Mike has done virtual machines. I have done them to a lesser extent. We, of course, a couple of weeks ago, I beg your pardon. There it goes. We did containerization 2 weeks ago with Docker containers. And I think it's so much better to learn from this stuff besides reading about it, by seeing somebody demonstrate it in a presentation, Mike doing a Udemy course, or me doing a presentation here, Mike doing one, for you to go out and do this, and especially Docker. It's so easy to do. All of that tutorial that we did 2 weeks ago, and on a basic Pi 3B with 1 gig of RAM, and it works just great. So now we're adding to that third element, the emulation of it. Emulation is specifically dealt with in A+, in Objective 4.2. One of these sub-objectives in there is called Emulator Requirements. There are lots of objectives related to virtualization. Network Plus has lots of virtualization stuff, as does Sec Plus. So A+ is the only one that touches on, it's not real deeply into emulation, but it is there. So just a review, because we're going to do kind of a comparison here, and then we'll dive into our emulator. A container, we'll call that one end of the spectrum. At the application end of the spectrum, a container is a self-contained group of files, a primary program, and all of its dependencies. And as this container doesn't, now here's the important part about it, a container does not include an operating system. A container runs on a computer running a container engine. A Docker container runs on a computer running a Docker engine, and that thing will interface with the real native operating system that runs on the computer. So we got ARM-based versions of Docker, and Intel-based versions, and Linux versions, and Windows versions. Cool. Over to the opposite end of the machine, a virtual machine. A virtual machine is another self-contained entity. However, what it does is it takes some CPU power, it takes some RAM, and it says, all of this is mine. And with this, I will create an artificial computer. And I will virtualize all of the hardware that's available in this computer within that self-contained artificial computer. So what you've got is a virtual computer. And that means just like a real computer, it has to have an operating system installed into it. It doesn't use the services of an operating system if your host computer even has one.
Okay.
So he's self-contained, he's complete, he needs applications, he needs everything, operating systems. And what's really cool is you could even run a container engine and a container in a virtual machine because it's just a computer. It doesn't know that it's not a real computer. Falling somewhere in the middle of all that is an emulator.
Okay.
An emulator holds a virtualized version of an operating system and some little bits of virtualized hardware. That operating system can be the same as the operating system that runs on the computer running, but that would be kind of pointless.
Right.
Because the whole point here is to be able to run programs that are intended to run on different operating systems. So that's what we usually expect from an emulator. Now we're going to talk about a sophisticated emulator today, and I guess all of them are, but we're talking about something that emulates traditional desktop operating systems that we mess with today. Linux emulators, Windows emulators, Mac OS emulators. There may be some legal issues behind that, but technically, theoretically feasible. But there's all kinds of other really cool emulators out there for other kinds of really cool computers. Take, for instance, an emulator that emulates a gaming console, your Amiga, your PS whatever, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever we're on to, Xbox and various handheld ones that use cartridges. So we can create an emulator for that. And the job of this thing is to translate from the native operating system that's on your computer back and forth to the operating system of the computer, the device that you're emulating. So if you've got an old handheld Game Boy, they make emulators for Game Boys. You've got to get the program code. You obviously can't plug a cartridge into your computer, but that code is out there that was in the cartridges, and you download that, you run that on your emulator, and next thing you know, you're playing Frogger on your PC natively using the original code. And I think that's pretty darn magic.
Okay, it is magical. Although I would have to argue, why?
Because you want to play Frogger. And that is such a legitimate answer.
Really? Why?
That is a totally legitimate answer if you look at it in a macrocosm for those of you who prefer that. So the whole point here is I have a program. Here it is. It's on a cartridge. I can't run this anymore because my Game Boy blew up ages ago. Right. But, oh, cool. Wouldn't that be great if I could create a translator program that would allow me to suck the code off of here, put it in my PC, put it in my Mac, put it in my Linux box, whatever, and make it work with the hardware that's in that box. Well, all right, that's great if we use a game as an example, but how about something that's a more legitimate example? I have a program that calculates prime numbers, and it's only available, the program that I want, to run on an x86 Linux machine. I don't have an x86 Linux machine, but I do have a Raspberry Pi.
Okay.
I'll just get an x86 emulator and run that program through the emulator, and then the Pi can process it. So that's why. It's because I have programs that weren't designed to run on this platform, but I want to make them run on that platform. There's efficiency problems, right? So we got a lot of back and forth translating, got a lot of CPU horsepower required. It's not a panacea, but it's still useful and it's still magical.
Okay. All right. Let's make it happen.
I don't know how to do that.
I posted the link for box86.
Okay. And I'll have a link posted here shortly about the tutorial that we're going to use. Okay, so we covered all that in conversation. I don't have to do it from these notes. Important things about emulation. I kind of just hit on this, but I want to hammer a little bit harder. It's a program. An emulator is a program. it takes up CPU horsepower, it takes up RAM. And then the program that you want to run requires CPU horsepower and RAM. So the more powerful a computer that you can run this on with the more RAM, the better your experience is going to be. And that's what we said. We're going to have to overclock these things to really improve the experience. And if you can do this on an 8 gig Pi, it's better than a 4. If you can do it on a 4 gig Pi, it's better than a 2. And if you got a 1 gig Pi, you better have a fairly small program that you want to run.
Yes.
Yes, yes. Sorry,
Yes.
reading my notes here. Fast is fast, faster is better. Because the old American adage, if more is better, too much is just right. So let's learn something really quick, a techno factoid about the CPUs found in the current Raspberry Pi.
Okay.
All of them have this same spec. The faster they run, the harder they run, the hotter they get. And they can run without exploding up to 100 degrees Celsius. However, starting at 85 degrees Celsius, they throttle. They said, nope, that's it. I'm approaching my temperature max. I don't want you to hit 100. So it will slow itself down until it cools off. So
Gotcha.
85, the big target there. And I'm going to show you how to read the temperature of your CPU today, so you can find out what it's doing without, having some infrared laser guided reader, which is pretty cool too. All right, let me show you something on here. I got a little slideshow.
All right. Lay it on us, man.
I will. I'm feeling like it. Click, click, hey. I can zoom that out just a little bit. That's good enough. So what we're looking at here is a Raspberry Pi. This whole big box is a Pi. It's got Raspberry Pi hardware, some kind of storage. Maybe it's micro SD, maybe it's a USB, maybe it's an external device, a flash drive, a hard drive, an SSD, whatever. It's got built-in video. It's got built-in ports, all kinds of network ports and video ports and USB ports and others, camera ports. It's got an ARM CPU and lots of other goodies. And people write operating systems to operate on it. The big one, of course, the one that comes from the Raspberry Pi people, is Raspberry Pi OS, RPi OS. It is an ARM-based distro of Debian Linux. So it knows how to accept commands from programs and send them to the ARM processor. And he can send those replies back. The applications have to have two things going on for them. They have to either be able to speak exclusively to the Raspberry Pi operating system, and or it can do some bypassing and make native calls to the hardware in some circumstances. But here's our challenge. I want to run an application that doesn't know how to talk to Raspberry Pi ARM version of Linux. It knows how to talk to an x86 version of Linux. So will that run here is our big question. Let's see the answer. Not going to happen. And by the way, if I wanted to draw this really well, I would have done these up and down arrows for each of these little boxes too, each of these little programs. But we'll just presume that that's a bidirectional connection, a pipe. So, okay, you can't run an x86 Linux-based application on a Raspberry Pi OS operating system. What you need is a translator, an emulator. So the emulator has three elements to it. We're going to use box86 here. It's got a part that knows how to speak to ARM-based Linux. It's got another part that knows how to speak to x86-based Linux. And then it's got a translator function in between the two of them. And as a result, I can run x86 Linux-based applications. It talks to the Linux level of our emulator, thinking that it's talking to a native x86 version of Linux. And here this poor guy is running tons of CPU cycles and chewing up RAM to talk to ARM Linux, which in turn is talking to ARM, and then we get responses back, and then it has to translate it back. And So you need a powerful processor to make this thing smooth. You have that look, Scott.
I just want to correct the typos. That's all. That's
Okay. Which one? Which of
um,
the many?
one. Normally, ARM is all uppercase these days,
I disagree with that, but okay.
or all lowercase. So
I
it's
believe that I actually put some thought and research into this, and I see this both ways. ARM is a company
right.
named ARM, capital A, lowercase RM. So that's the mindset that I went into it with.
Okay. And we can disagree on these
We
things.
can. We'll agree to disagree, and you can chastise me after class. And if necessary, I will fix it. Okay, so then I got a couple notes here. So your emulator requires RAM and CPU power to improve the experience or to make the best experience. We want the most powerful CPU that we can get. To do that, we'll overclock and cool our CPU. And of course, the more RAM, the better. And of course, we need more RAM if we're going to run more and more applications to boot. We'll come back to him.
Whoop. Wow. Okay. Yeah.
Hey, that's a fun slide. You're going to like that one. That's going to answer a
I'm
zillion
scared already, man.
A+ questions.
Scared, I tell you.
It's much simpler than it looks.
Okay. As soon as you start dropping, yeah.
It's simple. Trust me.
Oscilloscope.
All right, so let's take a look at the tutorial that we're going to use for this thing. I'll bring him up on slide. It's there. So we can do this. This is a tutorial that has the 3 sub-projects built into it. It's over at tomshardware.com, how-to Raspberry Pi install Steam. So these guys had an end goal in mind. There is a program that I want to run that's designed for x86 Linux, and I want to run it on a Raspberry Pi. And the program that they wanted to run was Steam, a Steam game, a Steam client. And so they created this whole tutorial that goes through everything that you need to do. Overclocking, they don't talk about cooling in this thing. I'll take care of that. Installing the emulator, and then installing Steam. So we're going to tear that tutorial apart, do it in a different order than they did it. Scott, do I see you typing and grabbing to post?
I will.
Okay, I got it right now.
You got it? Okay.
Yep. Okay, tutorial, it is in the feed at the current time. Huzzah.
Excellent. Thank you.
My pleasure. Okay. Hey, look at that. I have this little note. Post link above in the YT chat feed. So the first thing, we got to know a couple factoids about the emulator that we've chosen to use.
Okay.
I didn't choose it because of that tutorial. I chose that tutorial because it uses this emulator. Because this isn't the only emulator in town that's designed to run on a Raspberry Pi OS.
All right.
If you ask anybody who's been playing in this arena for the last 7 or 8 years, what emulator, they stop you right there. And the answer is QEMU. And I don't know what the Q stands for, but it's an x86 emulator. It's been around for a very long time. And that's its good news and bad news. It's stable, but it hasn't received much improvement or development over recent years. But I will mention that there is another package that is often installed with that. The whole point of QEMU was to enable Microsoft programs or programs that would run on Windows to be able to run on a Pi. Well, that emulator in and of itself is not good enough because it doesn't have a Windows operating system interface. So there is another program out there called Wine, which is a really funny thing because it stands for Wine is not an emulator.
Right. I think Andrew
Fine.
posted that.
Technically speaking, we can say it's not an emulator, and we can get into the techno speak about what's different. It's a compatibility layer. It's a freaking emulator. All right. If you want to say that it's not, you would be right. But, and we'll use Mike's phrase. You're absolutely right, but you'll have no friends. So, but it provides a windowy environment so that you could now run a Windows program through Wine, through QEMU, and through ARM, and all the way back. And it's kind of cool. But box86, a much newer product. It's much more enhanced. It's got it's Linux already built into it, but generic Linux.
Okay.
Does it have a downside? Everything does, right? The one downside to this, it's kind of a downside. It's really not that bad. It only works on 32-bit versions of Raspberry Pi OS. Big deal. There are no official 64-bit releases of Raspberry Pi OS, so I don't care.
Therefore,
that also fine. Therefore means, go ahead, Scott.
No, therefore it's fine. Yeah.
Yeah. Therefore, you can only also run 32-bit programs on there.
That's the real downside.
Yeah. I suspect that if and when a 64-bit RPi OS comes out, that we will see shortly thereafter box86 do the same thing.
But will it change its name to box64?
Definitely not. All right, equipment and setup.
Okay.
The project begins here, lads. I've killed 20 minutes from the time I said, let's start the project. And most of the project here, the time-consuming thing, besides one step out of the 4, is prepping a new install. So this is actually the same installation that I have talked you through many times before. I'm just going to do this as a short review. So the equipment that I'm using, a Raspberry Pi 4B with 4 gigs, because I don't have one with 8 gigs. I got a 64 gig card in that. You could do a 32. I suspect you could get away with a 16 if you were just following along here with this lab. But if you're going to build something that's real, a 4 to 8 gig machine and a big storage device, if you're going to use SD cards, 64 or 128 gigs. If I was using a real machine and I was really going to constantly run programs on this thing and add more, I would go for an external fast USB storage device like an SSD. But for ours, we're kind of in the middle range for today's project. Network connection, wired or wireless, is absolutely fine. You can do both. And surprise, you need a power supply. And one of the things that I'm adding this week now, and I started adding a couple of weeks ago when we talked Docker, because of the new installer with the Raspberry Pi Imager, you don't need a monitor or a keyboard or a mouse anymore. There were ways around that in the past, but they've made it so much easier. So this is just cool. You're going to need another computer because you're going to have to log into the thing and emulate it. And you could do this with a keyboard, monitor, mouse, and not use another computer. That's fine too. But I don't like to use monitors on my keyboard. I got to stand up behind my desk and shuffle wires and all that stuff. So the fact that I can just plug it in and plug an Ethernet cable in or go one wirelessly, that's beyond magic for me. I don't need to lean back there. I'll knock over Han Solo.
So the other thing with the other limitation, right, with the 32-bit OS is an upper RAM limit, right?
Man, no, let's just, I'm in a conundrum here.
Okay.
Because I believe that Mike has latched on to something that's not quite right, and he pushes it all the time. And I think that he may have convinced you of this same thing. So you got to, without getting into a class on this today, remember there are 2 buses for a computer. There's the external data bus and there's the memory address bus. When we're talking about 32-bit computers, we're talking about the EDB bus. We're talking about the ability, the width of the maximum width of a command that can go into a computer, or the maximum width of a response. The EDB is, the address bus is a set of wires that determines the value of an address, the location of an address in RAM. And they are not directly linked with one another. You can have a 40 wire address bus on a 32 wire EDB.
Absolutely.
Okay, so there is not a 4 gig limitation on a computer based on the size of its EDB.
Absolutely.
Okay, now not everybody in our company agrees with that. They used to agree with it, but then something shifted in the mindset. And
I mean, even Intel CPUs have been beyond 32-bit address buses since like the Pentium Pro.
right,
I mean,
the 4 gig limitation that we encounter in Intel and AMD chips is artificially introduced by our good friends at Microsoft with their 32-bit operating systems. They said, if you're going to be cheap and buy a 32-bit OS, we're going to limit you on how much RAM and how much of the address wires that we're going to use.
Right.
Okay.
All right. We are in agreement. It was just a question that popped in the feed.
Beautiful. So, yeah. Okay. And there's a real practical explanation for that then. Raspberry Pi OS is only available in 32-bit, right? And yet we've got 8 gig RPi 4s that are fully usable.
Right. I know. So it's like, it's one of those things that's like, wait. How can you have an 8 gig Raspberry Pi with 32-bit operating system?
Because it ain't Microsoft.
Exactly.
All right. Excellent question then. And I'm glad we could dive into that a little bit. Okay. So the process, I've done this before and I'll demo a little bit of it, but it's like any other process. We start with a micro SD card and we plug it into our computer, either with a micro SD reader or your computer may have a native one. And then you can either download an image of a fresh operating system from the nice folks over at Raspberry Pi, or this is cool. This is something that they've added fairly recently. Let me demo this to you a little bit. You've seen this before, some of this.
Okay.
Coming up. There we go. Say again, Scott?
Go ahead.
Okay.
I was making commentary.
Okay. So this is the current version of the Raspberry Pi Imager. It looks just like the old one. You pick a storage device. There's none in the menu here because I don't have any devices plugged in that could be imaged to. But then this is really cool and magic. Every one of these operating systems, the program is smart enough to know how and where to go get it online. So you don't have to pre-download an image anymore of full Raspberry Pi OS or light Raspberry Pi OS. You could just pick it from this menu and it will download it and write to the card as you see fit. And there's other ones. There's their Kodi version of it. And they've got some other OSs that are available, Ubuntu and Manjaro. So I always download mine first just because I want them there. I want them local, and I think it's quicker for it to write because it's all there. But you don't have to. So if you've downloaded one, a zip, for instance, then you can use custom, go to where you save your zip files. There we go. So you don't have to even extract them anymore. You can simply download a zip of the image, pull this over. And then here, of course, is the magic. I do Control-Shift-X, and we get to a new management menu that allows you to preset a lot of your installation values. I showed you that about 3 weeks ago. I'm not going to go over this again, but I do have specific instructions. If you download the archive of this, it'll tell you some good suggestions on how to do this. Start by disabling your overscan. That way you won't have black lines around your image. Give it a new host name. I called mine box86. And here's the fixer that you won't need a monitor for anymore. Enable SSH and set up a Pi password. You can use the default one, RASPBERRY. If you use something other than the default, write it down. You get the idea. You can pre-configure your Wi-Fi. I got a Wi-Fi in here that's ADB5, and the password is, by the way, letters you got to use uppercase in here. 13C6A, blah, 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 blah. Yes, you now know the first half of mine. Set your Wi-Fi country. This sucks. You can't use page down. You can't use letters. If I want to type in the letter U to hit US, nothing happened here. So if I want to go down to US, I just got to hold the down arrow.
Wow.
Until US shows up, or whatever country you're in. All right, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to be in Tobago today. Set up your locale settings. I'm in the Chicago time zone. And this one, skip first run wizard. I don't want to skip the first run wizard. The first run wizard does two things that are really important to me. One is it automatically expands the file system to be the same size as the micro SD card that you have installed. And the other one is it automatically does an update and upgrade after the install is complete. I've tried this both ways. It doesn't work. It never does both of those things automatically. So click it or don't click it. It makes no difference. Write the card. The right option will pop up here. And when it's done, it'll tell you can remove it. Sharing has stopped. Okay. All right. So I've prepped my card. Okay. Now I pop it in my Pi. I add power. I don't have a monitor hooked up to it, so I got to wait a certain amount of time for it to boot up. And I find that initial boots using this utility seem to be a little bit slower than the way I was doing it in the past. So I would wait about 10 minutes before trying to do anything. Now what you got to do, it's going to give you these kind of steps verbally here.
All right.
Oh, in fact, I'm going to show you a couple. You've got to find the IP address of your new Pi. There's about 5 different ways possible now. One, if you're hooked up to a real monitor, you could just, run the ifconfig command or IP space A.
Right.
You can check your router to see what new IP address has been assigned to a new Raspberry Pi.
Sure.
I run Angry IP Scanner, or I use that's Mike's favorite. My favorite is Advanced IP Scanner.
Okay.
And you can find it from that list. And if you've got the right stuff on your machine, and most people do, you can just type in raspberrypi.local and it may work into a browser or into whatever utility makes you happy. But whatever it is, you got to find out the name or the IP address.
Are you talking about the 1980s movie?
Obviously.
Just asking for a friend.
Okay, next.
Yes.
You've got to establish, to complete the installation, an SSH session with it. I don't want to, let me show you something here.
Okay.
We've always showed you Putty. It's a good program. I love Putty. It lets me do magical things. I can save profiles that allow me just to do a single click. But let me open a regular Windows command prompt here and share it with you. This is not something special that I had to do. This is built into your version of Windows right now as we speak. Share screen, this one. So Microsoft has a built-in SSH client. You just type in from the command prompt SSH. I didn't have to open that in administrator mode, just regular old, SSH. The account name you want to use at the IP address you want to use, 192.168.1. I think that was 104. Bump. I haven't run it on here with that, so yes. You got to type in the word yes. You only have to do that once. And the password, I use the stock password, RASPBERRY. Bam. Okay, so this is a fresh install, and nothing good has happened yet. So there's a few other steps that you've got to do. And this is true for every other install that you're ever going to do on a Raspberry Pi, especially if you're going to do this kind of install where your first contact with it is going to be with an SSH session. We're going to say sudo raspi or raspi-config. And those two things that didn't happen automatically by the wizard are what we're going to configure in here. So first you'll go into system options. This is a 100% keyboard-based program. You cannot use your mouse in here. I can put a mouse over it. I can click on select. It highlights it, but nothing happens. So we go up and down and enter to select on things. If you want to get to the menus down at the bottom, select and finish, you use the tab key. Okay, so we'll go into system options. And if you didn't already set up your wireless LAN, you can do that here. You can change your password for Pi here. If you didn't give it an alternative name yet, you would enter here on host name. And those are the only critical things that need to be done on this page. I tabbed over to the back. You can modify your display options here in my instruction sheet for download. You want, if you're going to remote into this thing, if you're going to use the graphical user interface, set mode 82. That's HD, 1920 by 1080. Because otherwise, it always defaults to 720, and that's too small to look at on most screens. This is the biggie, one of the two biggies that we're going to need to do. You go into interface options. SSH is already enabled. You're going to enter on here, and there will be a menu. I don't want to change it right now because everything's working. But you'll enter on VNC and you'll enable VNC. So now you can get at it graphically. We don't need the rest of this stuff for this lab. You can do more localization options here. Here's the second one that you got to do. This very first option, expand file system. And when you hit the enter key on here, nothing will happen. It'll say okay and bring you right back to this menu. Nothing happens with these settings until you have completed, gone back to the main menu and clicked finish. And then any changes that you set up in here will happen. And if they require a reboot, a message comes up and says, did you want to reboot? Yes, I do. Okay, cool. So that's built in. You don't have to download PuTTY, and you can do all of your configuration stuff with there. But now that I've enabled VNC, a lot easier, or it's a lot more friendly for folks who prefer that.
All right. So, Dave, I've got a question.
I've got an answer. Let's see if they match.
I understand about running a Pi headless, right? What I don't understand is the concept of gaming on a Pi headless. That's the part that I'm not quite getting.
Sure. Well, there's two problems here. One, if you're going to run headless, you're going to have frame rate issues no matter what, whether we're gaming, whether not gaming. For everything that I do in here, I don't need high frame rates, right? I'm going to show you something on Telnet. I'm going to show you something graphical that's not going to have a lot of motion. So big deal. The other part of the question is, let's get more fundamental. Do you want to game on a Pi? It doesn't have that high frame rate capability yet. Anyways, they get better and better every time. But
okay,
Broadcom, who makes the ARM chip for Raspberry Pi, has released very few of the guts level techno details of the video system in there. So we have yet to write a good graphical driver for it. So yeah, it's not a gaming rig until we can at least get a handle on that. And yeah, would I would have run a game headlessly over that, take an already handicapped system and add the delay necessary? Heck no, I would do gaming on a real monitor for the best experience.
Okay.
Yeah, but gaming is just an example that we're using here. And then it all comes down to, there is a game that I want to play. I may not want or expect to get the max experience out of it, but sure like to see it. Sure like to mess around with it.
Sure. Okay. All right.
But yeah, real world, I wouldn't game headlessly.
Okay. Just double checking.
Yep. All right, almost done with the setup. And then we do the installation with its grand 4 steps. So that thing would have rebooted. It would have expanded the file system. You would have lost your SSH connection. Mm-hmm. So I wait about 5 minutes for that. It's probably much quicker. 1 or 2 should be enough for it to do the job. But I give it 5 minutes and then reconnect. And you can do this now graphically with the GUI and then just open up one of the terminal programs within there. Or you can do this with SSH or PuTTY or whatever to do the install, because that's where we're at. And I'm just going to do that. We're never going to see the graphical interface today. We're doing 100% SSH setups. So now I'm in the tutorial, finally. And the tutorial runs in a different order than I'm presenting with. The first thing they do is talk about overclocking. The next thing they do is talk about installing the emulator. And then the last thing they do is install Steam. So we're going to start in the middle of it. I'm trying to see if I made a reference to where it is in there. Nah, that's right. So we're going to connect to it. I'll use Putty. I like Putty. It's powerful. Share it with you because I'm a nice guy.
Excellent.
IR square Rasbox. There it is. It's all set and ready to go. Prompts for password RASPBERRY. Share it. Carrot.
Put it on the screen.
Put it on the screen. Let's stick this thing over here.
There you go.
All right. So you're going to go down to the section where it says establish an SSH session with the new Pi, or words to that effect. So I said, I've got in my instructions where you can download Putty from. But again, now you know you don't even need Putty. Just use the SSH utility that's built into Windows. There's an SSH utility also built into Mac. And there's certainly an SSH program built into every flavor of Linux out there. Putty's got its place. I like it. But if you don't have it, you can't get connected to download it, use one of the native ones. All right, that's step number 1 of 4. Step number 2, they have 2 commands that they want. That's where they have you run sudo raspi config. So I did all that junk. I ran you through everything within there. Cool. Sorry, I wasn't in the tutorial. That was my setup. 2 steps involved in setup.
Okay.
Okay, now the tutorial. So, yeah, checking my notes here because I've covered a lot of this already. Steam Linux doesn't use the order. Launch Putty, VNC, or connect with VNC. I use Putty. I use this connect. We'll start by, we start by installing some tools necessary to create box86. Here's the problem. Box86 does not yet exist in the distro repository. So we have to get, first of all, the raw code for it down, and then we have to compile the program or the code into a program, and then we have to install the program into Raspberry Pi OS. Before we can do those 3 things, we need some tools to accomplish all that. And that's going to be step number 1. One of the 3 tools that we need is currently baked into Raspberry Pi OS, but the other 2 aren't. So you're going to run down the tutorial until you find the command that I'm about to post up here. So it says you're going to run sudo apt update and sudo apt install. And then here's the list of programs we're going to install. One is called Git. Git is actually already baked in to Raspberry Pi OS, so that's not going to happen. Build Essential is a program. That's tools necessary to compile programs. And CMake, another program that's part of the compiler. And then they put a -y here for one of these guys that says, are you sure you want to do that? Yes or no. It pre-feeds it yes. So that's step 1 of the tutorial. I took notes on how long it took mine to make to do each of these steps. That one took 1 minute and 20 seconds. And if and when you do this one, it's going to hang at the 6% install for a little while, 20, 30 seconds, something like that. So don't give up. It happens quickly.
All right. Sounds good.
Okay. Step number 2 has 2 commands in it. The first one is just the CD command. All they're doing there is making sure that you're in your home folder. If you already knew for certain that you were in your home folder, you run pwd and see if you're in whack home, whack pi, then you don't even need to do the CD, but it doesn't hurt you. And then we're going to run this second command. I gotta be so careful here that I don't want to actually run it again because I don't know what it will do with my installation. Probably
Blow it
not.
up.
Yeah. Okay, so it's going to use the git command and clone take a bunch of files and support files from this site, https github.com whack pitseb box86. And as part of that clone, it's going to create a folder right under where you are called box86. And it's going to put all this stuff that it's cloning from GitHub into that folder. So I did that yesterday by doing ls here. Here's that box86 folder that it created. And if we do a look in there, ls box86, there's some subfolders in there. There's some files in there. But that's all of step 2. We just cd and we run this git command.
Okay.
Yeah, we're almost done.
Wow. All right.
Step number 3 from the tutorial. 2 steps. First one, go into that folder that got created. cd space box86. I'm there. And then this is the long one. This is the one where you get to go make a cup of tea or mow the lawn or something like that.
This is the 28-minute one?
That is correct. So in the tutorial, it says you're going to make dir build, then cd into build, and then run the cmake program one level up, back up in box86. And then these are all the controlling parameters, and we don't have to get into them. We don't care. And when you get all that stuff read and understood, make. That's what actually compiles all that junk and all those files and support files up there into a single program. So I started mine at 3:30 last night in 30 seconds. It finished at 3:55, so it was 25 minutes. Gonna hit the big C here. So now we have created a program. In Windows, the equivalent would be is now you have an exec program. It's not running, it's not part of the operating system. You've just compiled a program. So the final step, number 4, this takes 1.5 seconds to run. Just stay right where you are, don't cd anywhere. And the 4th and final step to installing box86 is to put in this command, sudo make install. And it now becomes a native element in the RPi operating system. At this point, if you install a Raspberry Pi OS program, he says, I'll make calls to Raspberry Pi OS. If you install an x86 Linux program, he says, I'll make calls to what looks to be a Linux machine, a non-ARM, an x86 based Linux machine. So that's it. We're done for today as far as steps that I want to take you through. I want to spend a couple of minutes talking a little bit about overclocking, and I want to show you 2 commands that you can use to check the speed of your CPU and the temperature of your CPU. This presentation is way too long for me to do today, so I'm just going to do a couple of highlights.
Okay.
And I'm going to answer questions between now and then, like the one that Scott has on his lips.
I have a question. Are you going to make us wait until next week before you show us a Steam game running on?
Oh goodness, I only got 23 minutes left. We got to cool it and we got to overclock it.
All right.
Sorry, man. I want to do it now. Same as you.
Okay.
What I would also like you to do,
cooling
everybody,
cooling and overclocking for sure.
Yeah, next week or over the course of the next week. If you're a Steamer, go to the Steam store and look for Linux games that you find interesting and email me.
So Dave,
if you're not a Steamer, become a Steamer. It's free. Say again.
Dave, I actually posted a link about 10 minutes ago to a curated list of Linux games on Steam.
Nice.
So yeah, it's right there in the live feed.
Ahead of the game, as always. All right, let's take a look at some questions then. See how far we can get. I'm going to talk just a little bit about overclocking.
Okay.
And we will overclock and cool next week.
All right, sounds good.
And it's very, very cool. All right, I left off at 10 till or so. I'll tell you, I'll let you direct me to wherever I ought to be. Or have we covered everything?
Most things were covered. There were the questions were not. I didn't see any specific questions.
Okay, good.
There were a couple early, like at Amanda at 2:52 asked about good rescue disk for malware. But you had just started your presentation, so I posted a link to some good resources for her.
Very good, thank you.
And then Kevin Lopez asked about VRAM, and several of us jumped in because again, you were right at the beginning of your presentation. So
excellent. It's a good question too. I like that.
Yeah. So, but for the most part, it was just people kind of chatting about what you were talking about.
All right, it's 40 then. I'm just going to do about 10 minutes or so on this. This is about a 20-minute presentation.
Okay.
Maybe a little longer. But
okay, sounds good.
Overclocking. The tutorial, yeah, the tutorial is okay on overclocking. We're going to use it.
Will you post the tutorial link again, please?
Yes.
For the main.
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
Let me see if I even still have it in memory. Nope, sudo make install. Okay, first I'll put it in the chat.
Okay.
I lied. Oh, I can do it this way. Stand by. Vamp while I do what I'm doing.
I will vamp. In fact, at 3:39, Jason says he set up his exam for the end of the month. He's going to take it again. So, as we say on the stage, break a leg.
Really? I always thought we made some comment about Macbeth.
Don't turn your back on the lady.
Okay, I just posted the tutorial link.
Awesome. Thank you.
And I will throw it up here on screen again just for a moment because it's fun.
Cool.
Tutor link. So we're using one from Tom's Hardware. If you look up, if you just do a search with your favorite search engine, box86 on Raspberry Pi, you'll find 400 tutorials out there. But this one seems to work. I've tested it. Nice.
Very cool. Thank you.
Sure. All right, let me bring up my other handy dandy little note page. There it is, overclocking. So what I want to mention just lightly about overclocking today is overclocking is when we take a CPU and we push it beyond its maximum clock. Now, what does that mean? Well, we send electronic pulses to a CPU, and every pulse that we send causes the CPU to do an increment of work. For the last 20 years, it takes 2 pulses, 2 digital up downs, we call those cycles as well, to do 1 element of work. And an element of work is called a flop, a floating point operation. Recently, in the last 2 years, there have been CPUs released that can do a flop with 1 pulse. That's incredible. That instantly and automatically doubles the capability of a CPU. So let's talk about why these maximums come. Intel makes a chip, AMD makes a chip, and it says the maximum number of clock cycles per second that you can put into this chip and have it function is 2 billion cycles per second. That elevates the temperature to an acceptable level without getting too hot, as long as you have an appropriate cooling solution. And what they consider appropriate is one that they provide when they sell you the CPU. It comes with a stock heat sink and fan configuration. So if you use that and you clock this thing at its default value of 2 gigahertz, then it's going to run fine forever until something else in the computer fails. But what if I want to send more clock cycles per second to the guts of this chip? Well, that's going to raise the temperature, possibly so much that the stock cooling solution isn't acceptable. So we're going to have to chuck that and get something that makes more cool, right? We can talk about better fans, better heat sinks, water cooling, not actually pouring water on the CPU, but it puts water flow over a little container, a reservoir on top of the CPU. That water picks up the heat, takes it to a radiator. The radiator gets a fan blowing through it. It cools things down, and we just pump the water, just like water cooling works in your engine in your car. And there's other more exotic cooling solutions, but a big fan works pretty well for Raspberry Pi. Again, that one that I stuck up earlier, this thing will allow you to run the CPU at its max theoretical capability in an average room temperature room, 20C or a little higher than that, 25C, 68 to 75 degrees, 80 degrees, something like that. You can run this thing full tilt.
Okay.
Okay, cycles per second. I'm going to show you that graphic.
All right. Now we're going to the oscilloscope. All
yeah,
right.
well, honestly, it's not as bad as it seems.
Looks terrifying, Dave.
I hope.
Terrifying.
Okay, well, good. Then it's a good reason to put up to show that it is, in fact, not quite so scary. This is A+ Class 101, how CPUs work. So we got to send clock cycles to the CPU. And the way that happens is built onto your motherboard is a crystal. In fact, there's a bunch of little crystals in there, and they're in tiny little oval-shaped tin cans. And there's two wires sticking out of the tin can. And built inside that tin can is a little tiny, tiny, tiny piece of quartz crystal, highly refined and not natural. It's synthetically made. Well, when you apply direct current voltage to one of the wires that's attached to one of the sides of the crystal, it will cause that crystal to vibrate. And a wire attached to the other side of the crystal will start receiving voltage from that crystal that cycles, poor drawing here, but cycles in a very pure sine wave, not like the jagged, horrible thing that I have shown presently. That's cool.
It looks beautiful, Dave.
It's beautiful. The smaller the crystal, the faster the vibration. So how fast can we get this thing to vibrate? Well, the usual crystal on your motherboard right now vibrates somewhere between 100 million times per second, which we would call 100 megahertz. A cycle per second, an event per second, is called a hertz, H-E-R-T-Z. And on a top end, around 300 million cycles per second, 3 million hertz, 3 megahertz. Well, that's nowhere near where we need our CPUs to operate. We're talking about running them in 1.5 gigahertz, 2, 3, 4, 4.5 gigahertz. Some unusual runs even faster than that. But before we can even do that and deal with that problem, this analog sine wave is not usable by a computer. So we have to run it through another circuit that converts a sine wave into digital pulses. And these are the pulses that we feed into the CPU. Wait a minute, Dave, you just said that feeding them into the CPU isn't good enough because they're too slow. That's true. So here's the last part of today's lessons. Built inside the CPU are a series of circuits called multipliers. A multiplier is a circuit that says, I will take in a pulse, a full cycle pulse, up, down, back up, in a certain amount of time. And however much time that was, I will generate, in this case, this is a 2x multiplier, twice as many cycles in 1 second as came in. So here, one cycle came in 1 second. A 2x multiplier says, I will generate 2 cycles per second as a result of that. I can take the output of this and run it into another 2x multiplier. So over 1 second, 2 pulses go in, and that means 4 pulses will come out. Now they make 10x multipliers and 20x multipliers and odd number multipliers, 1.7x multipliers. That's kind of hard to say for every pulse that I put in 1 second, 1.7 pulses comes out. It is in fact the truth, but it's easier to think of if I put 10 pulses in 1 second, I'll get 17 pulses come out. So there are chains and strings of these multipliers that exist inside the CPU. Which ones get used is up to the CPU in what they call fixed multiplier CPUs. When he needs to throttle back, he runs slow. He says, I'll turn off some of these big multipliers and just use some of the little multipliers and multiply fast or multiply slowly. So we're going to take that 100 megahertz input or 200 or 300 or whatever. And when we're running slow, maybe we'll only get 600 megahertz. In fact, that's the normal idle speed of a CPU in a Raspberry Pi, 600 or 800 megahertz. A little faster in Intel and AMDs. And when things are nice and cool and you're running a program, he says, okay, I'm going to turn on some more multipliers so I can crank this up to the default maximum speed under stock air cooling of 1.5 gigahertz. So now, if you buy an Intel chip that you want to control that with, you can buy a model that has unlocked multipliers. And you can kind of sort of pick the multipliers that you're going to use. And you do that not actually by directly picking the multipliers, but by setting some configurations in the BIOS. And the system will read that configuration and say, okay, that means I got to turn on this multiplier, but not this one, and this one, but not this one. And it'll pick a set of appropriate multipliers to come up with as close to the target value that you've set up in the configuration files. You can tell those CPUs because their model numbers end with the letter K. So an i9-6600K has unlocked multipliers. Do you know the designator for AMDs? I didn't bother to research that.
I don't.
Okay. You wouldn't want to use an AMD chip anyways because Intel chips are better.
And we all know that's not true.
Right. So the multipliers inside the Raspberry Pi are unlocked.
Okay.
And all we have to do to configure them is go to a little configuration file called, amazingly, config.txt. It's in the whack boot folder. Let me show that to you real quick. And then I'm going to show you 3 commands that our tutorial wants us to put in there. There they are. Let me highlight them and get them copied. Control C. Let's putty. Because it's ready to go. Rasbox. Okay, share. Okay, so here's a putty session. I'm going to CD. You have to click in there when you do that. CD to whack boot. There's a bunch of stuff in there, but the one thing in here that I care about is config.txt. And make sure it's in there.
Yeah, it's right there.
Yeah, there it is. Okay. So we'll sudo nano config.txt. And there's some lines that we're going to uncomment in here. And as a result, we're going to wind up with the following 3 lines. Over voltage equals 6. There is a certain amount of voltage that goes to the guts of the CPU. And we need to increase it when we overclock. And then we're going to set the ARM frequency. Well, we're not going to set this max. 2.147 gigahertz is the theoretical max that the RPi 4 CPU can run at. It will run at it. However, no matter how cool you make it, that's so close to its functional limits that sometimes you'll get black screens. You won't be able to boot with it, things like that. So we're going to run it a little slower, probably around 2000 megahertz.
So, and the big danger here with the overclocking is not the overclocking so much, it's the over voltage.
Right.
Right. That's where you do it wrong.
Yeah, right. When we mess with over voltage, we make test adjustments in 25 millivolt jumps, 0.025 volts. So the default ARM frequency is 1.5 gigahertz. We'll bump it up to around 2 gigahertz. The default GPU, the graphics processing unit frequency, is 500 megahertz. Top end is 750 megahertz. And that's completely stable.
Okay.
So that's cool. That's how we're going to run it. And while I've got this done, I got one last thing to show you how to take a look at your current speeds and temperatures. And I'll do this again next week in greater detail. So you don't have to memorize this all, but you can always watch it again on the archive. So there's this parameter checker called vcgen command. I run vcgen command measure clock on ARM. There's other features we can measure on. And it's right now running at 600,117,184 cycles per second, about 600 megahertz because it's bored. If I ran a program, we could get this to be running up at 1.5 gigahertz.
What's the 48?
I don't know.
Okay.
I'll research that for next week.
Okay.
All right. How about the temperature? I'm going to show you two ways to check temperature. The temperature is updated on 1 second intervals into a file that you can read with the cat command. It's over in sys class thermal zone 0 temp. And it's running about 50 degrees Celsius right now, divide by 1,000. Or there's a more direct measure that will actually give you the temperature so you don't have to divide it. We'll use that vcgen command again. Oops, didn't save it. Please move this window away from the shared application. Fine. There we go. So excellent. I can just say vcgen command measure temp, and there it is at 51.1 degrees Celsius. So when you're doing overclocking, you keep a window open that you can check frequencies and temps, and then you work in another window with your various experiments.
Okay.
All right. So next week we'll get into the full details of that. We'll set up some overclocking temperatures. I'll have this already installed. I'll just talk you through it. But
okay,
whatever cooler you're going to buy, and I'll talk about some different coolers that are available.
Okay.
Do it first, get it installed, get it running, and then start your overclocking because it makes more sense.
All right.
All right. Last questions. We got about 5 minutes to go to wind things up.
Sounds like I have an absolute goal for my Pi 4B.
I know I do.
So yeah, sounds great.
Okay, boy, yeah, I still see that VRAM. I'm just going to jump down to the end here. If you have an important question that got missed, post it right now because we're online for about 3 more minutes.
Oh yeah! Wow, we're already down at the end.
Loving that stuff. Somebody boo. Intel chips are better. When did that happen? Back when Intel got founded, I think, and they made the first 8080.
Now, best bang for the buck. I think pretty much everybody agrees that yes, if you want like the screaming fastest, i9, go Intel and pay your money, and you just get the baddest bad boy CPU on the market. But for the rest of us,
right, for price point per performance, AMD is an excellent choice.
Yep, very much so.
This commercial brought to you by AMD.
Turns out one of my friends is an AMD engineer.
Wow.
I know, right?
Hello, volunteer CPU tester.
Right? I won't mention the name, but yeah, very, very cool. And we've completely, I was singing, doing completely different things. And it's like, what do you do? Oh, I write on computers.
Let me bring you some scotch.
I do CPUs at AMD. I'm like, seriously?
That is so super cool.
Yeah.
I will send a bottle of Tullamore due to him, 17-year-old.
Yeah, okay.
In order to get onto the list of testers.
Just to be able to go to Austin for to go to the fab. Yeah, that'd be cool.
Maven Feliciano at 352 says, didn't Intel do something sneaky recently? Both of them are always doing something sneaky. I don't recall anything particularly egregious.
Yeah, I'm not.
So
nothing.
Go with who you like. I was a hardcore Intel nut for years, said Jason Helms, until I bought my new laptop running Ryzen 5 2500U, and I think it runs just as good as Intel. Sure. They make apples to apples chips. Chips are chips today. Like Scott says, unless you're looking to build an ultra performer machine, you can't tell the difference between chips. Man, my Microsoft Word came up really fast. I love this new AMD chip.
Because Word, man, I
That's right.
overclock for Word.
Hey, well, let's wind this thing up then. It is the end of Friday Pi Day. I will see you shortly on Discord. Scott's got a meeting. I already forgot what I wanted to talk to you. Oh, I do know what I want to talk to you about. So stay on Zoom when we get done here for just a couple of seconds, and
Sure,
we'll
no
do
problem.
that. In the meantime, I wish everybody safe travels, safe health, healthy weekend, and good studies. Scott?
Do you have time to pop the unofficial Discord link up?
Yeah, I got time to do anything you tell me to do. How's that?
So yeah, we have just for those of you who are newer to the channel, we have an unofficial Total Seminars channel Discord link hosted by our friend Jose Braden. Dave will post the link. The link changes every week. So if you're looking at this in the archives, do a search for the unofficial Total Seminars channel and you'll find us. But for now, if you want to just like hang out with us afterwards, it's a chance for you to show up on camera. And
okay, just posted the link.
Cool.
So that thing is going to stay up and running. You'll be able to read the chat for a couple seconds. I did it about 40 seconds past the hour.
Okay, awesome. So perfect. Dave, thank you very much.
Thank you. Really glad to have you on again.
Awesome.
Good stuff. I loved having you on with Mike. You guys have such great rapport. And I love working directly with you, hopefully in the same way.
Absolutely.
I think the thing just shut off. Maybe it's just buffering. All right. Well, I'm going to end it right now. Okay, so everybody, good night.
And then we get the awkward stare. My favorite part of the entire live stream.